Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking at the human body in a way you might not expect.
Oh, very different.
Yeah, we're going beyond biology like the usual stuff. We'll be exploring the body as like a source of ancient wisdom and also symbolism.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, we've got one source for this one,
Okay.
and it gets a little unconventional.
Oh, how so?
Well, it blends anatomy and physiology, but with some, interesting interpretations of things.
All right. I'm intrigued.
So get ready for some concepts like a Santa Claus drum in the brain, a monthly seed that's connected to your birth sign,
Okay.
and even the body as a map of biblical stories.
Oh, wow. It's fascinating how this source is connecting, like anatomy and ancient myths, to suggest a deeper way of understanding the body. But as always with these kinds of unconventional ideas, I think it's healthy to approach them with a critical eye.
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump right in. A source starts by focusing on a small, it's actually rather mysterious, part of the brain called the colostrum.
Oh, the clock.
Yeah. And for those who might not be familiar, the colostrum is like a thin sheet of neurons that's tucked between some major brain areas. And scientists are still like trying to figure out exactly what it does.
Right. And this is where things get interesting. Our source suggests that the colostrum produces a special fluid, which they call Christos, or Christ oil.
Interesting.
Now, this isn't like a scientifically recognized thing or anything,
Okay.
but the source claims that it plays a crucial role in their whole interpretation.
All right. So they even connect this fluid to the myth of Santa Claus.
They do. They describe this Christ oil moving down the spinal cord, and they liken it to Santa going down a chimney.
Oh, wow.
They even give the colostrum these nicknames like Santa Claus drum and Holy Colostrum.
Okay. So we're probably not talking about literal tiny Santas.
Right.
But metaphorically speaking, it's still a pretty striking image, this Christ oil descending from the colostrum, the supposed Santa Claus drum. But where does this oil go, according to the source?
Well, its journey continues down to the sacrum, which is the triangular bone at the base of the spine.
Yep.
And to the sacral plexus. This plexus is a network of nerves, plays a key role in a lot of bodily functions.
Right, like a hub.
Yeah, think of it as like a central hub for information flowing to and from your legs and your lower body.
So this Christ oil travels from the brain all the way down to this nerve hub at the base of the spine.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens then?
So here's where it gets even more intriguing. The source connects this Christ oil to a special seed that's said to form each month.
Oh, interesting.
They say that when the moon is in the same zodiac sign as your birth sign, a seed, or they also call it a germ, forms in the solar plexus.
Okay.
And the solar plexus, for those unfamiliar, is a complex network of nerves in your abdomen, around the area of your stomach.
Okay, so each month there's like potential for something important to happen within us.
Okay.
And it's linked to our birth sign as well as this Christ oil.
That's how the source presents it. And they emphasize that the seed isn't meant to stay put. They describe it as embarking on a journey, back up the spinal cord, heading back towards the brain.
So it's like a round trip for the Christ oil, first descending and then helping this monthly seed ascend. What's the purpose of all this, and what happens to the seed as it travels?
So the source suggests that the pineal and pituitary glands are very important in processing this Christ oil as the seed travels upward.
Okay.
Now, you probably know that these glands are in the brain and are involved in producing and regulating hormones, but the source gives them an even more profound role in all of this.
Right, and they also bring in this idea of the tree of life to the journey, don't they?
They do. They make this really interesting connection. They equate the tree of life with the vagus nerve, which is one of the longest nerves in the body.
Oh, wow.
It runs from your brainstem all the way down to your abdomen, connecting your brain to various organs along the way. And they suggest that the seed's journey is somehow linked to the vagus nerve, to this tree of life.
So we're not just talking about a straightforward anatomical pathway.
Right.
There's like a more symbolic or energetic connection going on here.
Right.
Between this seed and its journey and the Christ oil and the vagus nerve as the tree of life.
Yeah.
It's starting to sound like a map for some kind of internal process.
And the source isn't shy about drawing parallels to the biblical narrative of Christ either.
Oh, okay.
They see these symbolic connections between the seed's journey and the Christ oil and the life, death, and resurrection of Christ.
So they're adding a spiritual dimension on top of anatomy and physiology. It's a bold interpretation. So what happens when this seed, guided by the Christ oil, reaches its final destination? Where does it end up?
So the source emphasizes the optic thalamus, which, is a part of the brain
Right?
that plays a crucial role in processing visual information. It
Okay.
acts as a relay station, sending visual signals from your eyes to other parts of the brain.
So this Christ oil journey ends in the part of the brain responsible for how we see the world. What happens there?
The source claims that when the Christ oil reaches the optic thalamus, it essentially activates dormant brain cells, leading to an elevated state of consciousness.
So they're suggesting that this whole process, this journey guided by the Christ oil, is a path to some kind of enlightenment or awakening within the brain.
That's what they seem to be implying. But, as with any journey, there are potential obstacles along the way. The source also warns about behaviors that can negatively impact the Christ oil and its journey.
Okay, so there are things we can do that might prevent the Christ oil from reaching its destination and activating this potential within us.
Right. And some of them might surprise you. They specifically mention things like excessive eating, consuming alcohol, and engaging in sexual activity as detrimental to the Christ oil and its potential to reach the optic thalamus.
Interesting. They relate those behaviors to the concept of eating from the tree of life from the Bible. And that's traditionally been associated with mortality.
Right. Exactly. They're suggesting that indulging in those behaviors is like eating from the tree of life, preventing the Christ oil from completing its journey and achieving its transformative potential.
It sounds like they're proposing this delicate balance within us, where we have this potential for an elevated state of being, but our actions and choices can directly impact that potential.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the key takeaways from the source's interpretation.
Okay. But it gets even more complex when they start describing the body as a map of biblical locations.
Yeah, the body as a map.
So they're saying the body can be seen as a literal map of places mentioned in the Bible.
That's what they're saying. They make some specific connections, like they link the head, especially the domed shape of the skull, with heaven. Then they say the heart represents the middle garden, or Midgard. And finally, they associate the area of the reproductive organs with Sodom and Gomorrah.
Wow. It's like they're weaving biblical symbolism into the very structure of the human body.
Yeah.
So what about the idea of a land flowing with milk and honey? Where does that fit into their body map?
So they give this a very literal interpretation. They say that milk and honey refers to secretions from the pineal and pituitary glands.
Okay.
Specifically, they say that the pineal gland produces a honey-like substance that contains DMT, while the pituitary gland produces a milk-like substance.
So they're claiming that the land flowing with milk and honey is actually within us, in our brains.
That's their interpretation, and it reinforces this idea that the human body holds all these profound secrets and potential that we might not even be aware of. But they're not alone in this line of thinking. The source actually quotes Santos Bonacci, who they present as an expert on these concepts.
Right. Let's hear what Santos Bonacci has to say. I'm really curious how his perspective lines up with what we've heard so far.
Well, Bonacci seems to agree. He's quoted as saying that preserving this sacred oil, presumably the Christ oil, through certain practices, can lead to longevity and a heightened state of being.
So he's echoing the idea that there's this link between this oil, our choices, and the potential for a longer, more awakened life.
That's right. And he goes on to talk about raising the vibration of this Christ oil. He specifically mentions the optic thalamus as the light of the world, connecting it to the idea of the third eye, which is often mentioned in, spiritual traditions.
So it sounds like he's adding another layer of meaning to this whole process. He's saying it's not just about physical health, but about spiritual transformation as well.
Exactly.
And Bonacci also brings up this concept of four brains. He lists the cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata, and the solar plexus, which he associates with what he calls the animal instinctive brain. Wait, so are we talking about four separate brains now, or is this a metaphor for describing different functions within the brain and body?
That's a great question, and one we can definitely delve into further. But for now, what's important is that Bonacci emphasizes this need to move beyond what he calls the lower mind, which is associated with the solar plexus, and those primal urges to access a higher level of consciousness.
Wow, this is getting pretty complex. We've got this Christ oil journey, the biblical symbolism, these four brains, and the potential for spiritual transformation. I'm starting to see why you mentioned the importance of critical thinking.
It definitely challenges conventional ways of thinking about the human body and what it's capable of.
Sure. Before we get too overwhelmed with all of these ideas, though, let's take a moment to kind of reflect on what we've learned. And then we can dive deeper into those four brains and how Bonacci suggests we can move beyond that lower mind. All right, so Bonacci suggests we have these four brains working within us, each with its own function and level of consciousness. And he seems particularly concerned about that fourth brain, the solar plexus.
Yes. He calls it the animal instinctive brain and says it's driven by base desires and lacks those higher reasoning abilities of what he calls the God brain or cerebrum. It's like we're in this constant battle with our inner animal, always trying to rise above those primal urges.
But is he suggesting that these brains operate totally independently? Or is there some, interplay between them?
It's a good question. I think what he's highlighting is the potential tension between our higher aspirations and those more instinctual reactive impulses that can sometimes hold us back. And this idea of striving for elevation, for moving beyond those baser instincts, seems to be a central theme in both Bonacci's perspective and the source material we're exploring. They both seem to be saying that we have this potential for something extraordinary within us, but we often get bogged down by, those lower impulses.
So we're caught in this tug of war between our higher and lower selves. And the outcome depends on which brain we're letting steer the ship, so to speak.
Yeah.
But how do we actually escape the pull of that lower mind, that solar plexus brain that Bonacci talks about?
Well, both the source and Bonacci emphasize practices like meditation, conscious breathing, and a mindful approach to eating and behavior. They suggest that these practices can help raise the vibration of that Christ oil, allowing it to overcome that downward pull of the lower chakras and ascend to the higher mind.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does this idea of constant refinement fit with the source's claim about, a monthly seed? Is there a cyclical element to this transformation?
That's a great point. It seems like there might be two processes happening at the same time: a gradual refinement through practice, and then this cyclical opportunity for a deeper transformation that's associated with this monthly seed.
So it's not just about avoiding certain behaviors, but actively engaging in practices that cultivate a more refined state of being. It's like we're constantly refining the Christ oil, making it more potent so it can fulfill its potential.
Yeah, I like that way of putting it. It highlights the idea that transformation is an ongoing process, a conscious effort to align yourself with those higher aspects of your being.
But it's not easy, right? I mean, we're constantly bombarded with distractions and temptations that pull us back down to that lower mind level.
Absolutely. It's a constant balancing act. You're trying to navigate the complexities of modern life while, also striving for this inner transformation. And that's perhaps where that symbolism of the body as a map comes into play.
You mean seeing the body as a reflection of these biblical locations?
Exactly. It provides a framework, a visual representation of this inner journey that you're on. The head, as a symbol of heaven, becomes the destination, the place of enlightenment. The heart, as the middle garden, symbolizes a stage along the way, point of balance and integration.
And then Sodom and Gomorrah, representing those base desires
Yeah.
that can lead us astray. It's like a cautionary tale embedded within our own anatomy.
Yeah. And within that framework, practices like meditation and mindful living become tools for navigating this inner landscape, for guiding that Christ oil or seed upward toward its ultimate destination in the heaven of the head.
It's a really fascinating way to look at it, almost like an internal pilgrimage that we're all on, whether we realize it or not. But how does all of this connect to the light of the world that Bonacci and the source keep referring to?
Well, they both link the light of the world to the optic thalamus, the part of the brain that processes visual information. They suggest that when the Christ oil reaches this point, it activates dormant brain cells, illuminating consciousness, from within.
So the light isn't something external. It's an awakening that happens inside your own brain,
Yeah.
like you're switching on a light. That's always been there, but has been dormant.
That's the idea they're presenting. And it connects to the concept of the third eye, which a lot of spiritual traditions describe as a higher level of perception, an ability to see beyond the limitations of the physical world.
So this entire process, this journey of the Christ oil or seed, is ultimately about activating that inner vision, that expanded awareness. It's about becoming more than what we are now and tapping into this hidden potential that's within each of us.
That's the core message that comes out of both the source material and Bonacci's perspective. They're proposing that you have this capacity for profound transformation, both physically and spiritually, and that this transformation is intricately linked to how your body works.
It's a pretty bold claim. It definitely requires some critical thinking.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly thought-provoking. I mean, what if they're right? What if there is this untapped potential within us just waiting to be awakened?
It's definitely a question worth pondering, isn't it? What if these ancient interpretations, even though they're metaphorical, point to a deeper truth about our ability to, transform ourselves and access higher states of awareness?
What if the key to unlocking that potential is within the very structure and function of our bodies?
And what if the practices we engage in, things like meditation, mindfulness, conscious living, are actually tools for refining and guiding that inner light toward its full expression?
It's a lot to consider, but I think that's the beauty of a deep dive like this. It challenges our assumptions, pushes us to think outside the box, and maybe even sparks a new level of awareness within us.
And who knows, maybe that spark is all it takes to ignite the light of the world within each of us.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into this unique take on the human body,
Yeah.
I think it's good to take a step back. Look at the bigger picture. We've been focusing on specific things, anatomical structures, biblical symbolism, the four brains idea. But what does it all actually mean, for the average person?
Yeah, that's a great point. What's the takeaway here for our listener?
Right, exactly.
Well, one thing that stands out to me is this emphasis on personal responsibility. Both the source material and Vanashi highlight the idea that your choices, the way you behave, it all has a direct impact on your potential for transformation. It's not a passive thing, is it?
Yeah, it's not like we're just sitting around waiting for enlightenment to hit us
Yeah.
out of nowhere.
Exactly. It requires effort, awareness, and a conscious choice to align yourself with, those practices and principles that support this upward journey of the Christ oil or the seed.
Makes you wonder, what if they're right? What if these ancient traditions, these metaphorical ways of looking at the body, actually hold some practical wisdom for us, as we navigate the challenges of modern life?
I think that's the invitation here, to explore these ideas with an open mind and see if they resonate with you, with your own experiences and intuitions. Maybe there's more to these teachings than we realize at first.
It's like we're being asked to reconsider our relationship with our bodies, not just as, physical things, but as these intricate maps of potential, like microcosms of the entire universe.
It's an empowering perspective, don't you think? It suggests we have a much greater say in shaping our own lives, our own states of being.
So instead of feeling limited by our bodies, we can start to see them as vehicles for transformation, like vessels for this light of the world.
And that light, that heightened awareness, it doesn't have to be some far-off, unreachable goal. It could be much closer than you think, maybe hidden within the very cells and structures of your body.
Okay, so give us that final thought, the one that'll have our listeners thinking all night long.
All right. What if the key to unlocking that light, to activating your full potential, isn't about searching for something outside yourself?
Yeah.
What if it's about remembering what you've always had within you?
What if the journey's not about getting to some destination, but about rediscovering the source, like your own inner radiance?
And what if your body, with all its amazing complexity, is the map that leads you back to that source?
Wow, that's powerful. A map back to ourselves hidden within us all along.
So to everyone listening, I encourage you to dive deeper into these ideas, see what speaks to you, and approach your own body with curiosity and wonder.
Because who knows what secrets and potential are waiting to be discovered within you. That's it for this Dark Dive. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep that inner light shining bright.